is back on Fubo Sports Network. Follow us on all social media at Fubo Sports. Welcome on into Ball is Back, College Hoops Edition. I'm Julie Stewart-Binks, and I could not be more excited for the NCAA tournament to finally get underway. The madness that March brings us fans cannot be replicated. But what's it like for the student athletes that are grinding it out for a month? Well, to help answer that and a whole lot more, we are thrilled to be able to have three former college basketball superstars with us: Donnie Marshall, Crystal Dangerfield, and Richard Jefferson. Let's get right to it. All right, I'm very excited to be joined by my next guest, who is a former NBA champion with the Cleveland Cavaliers, basketball analyst with ESPN, and was a finalist in the 2001 NCAA tournament with the Arizona Wildcats, none other than Richard Jefferson. RJ, thank you so much for joining us here today to talk all things college hoops. How are you doing?
I am outstanding. I'm so excited to talk college basketball right now. Unfortunately, my Wildcats will not be in attendance, but that just means that there's opportunities for everybody else to succeed since we aren't there.
Yeah, many opportunities. There's a whole bunch of different schools that are competing for the first time as well. We're seeing it on Selection Sunday, like these kids that have never gotten to taste it before. What is that moment like when you hear your school's name called, but then you also find out who you get to play?
It's so surreal. And part of the reason why I love it is because everybody's experience is very, very different, right? When you have a Belmont or you have a smaller school that this is their first tournament appearance in 10 years, in 12 years, ever. Like, there's still schools that are having their first appearance ever. Like, that to me is magical. Like, my experience was different. Like, I went to University of Arizona because I wanted to win a national championship. They won a national championship right before I got there. So my goal was like, how can I get there? So Selection Sunday for us was different. Not saying that there was an expectation, but there was definitely oh, no, this is not what we celebrate, but this is the moment where you can become an Arizona legend and a college basketball legend. So when our names were called, especially I want to say my freshman year, we were a 4 seed. And so that started to kind of perk up things. It's like, oh, it's really, really here. And so it still to this day brings back so many great memories.
I can only imagine. Like, what is it when you're watching now, when you watch the games and even just watching Selection Sunday, as an analyst, as a former player, do you get the shakes? Like, do you feel like you're like back in there right now? How does it feel?
It does, because again, when I talk about the experiences for everybody has the same opportunity. You got one game. You got one shot. That's it. So for me, I just understand that joy that these kids are experiencing. And, I had so many friends that were in other places and guys that I grew up with, watching them. And again, I say this not to flex, maybe a little bit of flex, but in my 3 years in college, we were a 4 seed my freshman year. We were a 1 seed my sophomore year, and then our starting center got hurt. We lost in the second round to Wisconsin. Not that still bothers me. And then the next year we were a 2 seed. So our experience was like, all right, who do we play? Who are we about to get? Who else is in our bracket? Because not that you were ever looking, but you kind of look at everything as a whole, kind of like a state tournament where you're just like, all right, well, they're up there, we're down here, we got to play here. This is where we're going. There's like this mathematical, process that starts going through your brain while also only focusing in on one game. And I think that's what makes it so much fun.
Right, and you've had all these experiences. You mentioned the different years that you were there. What's maybe some of the more vivid memories that stand out that you carry with you to this day?
So my first 2 years, we lost in the first weekend, right? So we lost to a Wisconsin team that ended up going to the Final Four my sophomore year. And my freshman year, we lost, in the first round to Edward Nahara and Oklahoma, excuse me. But I think what I remember most vividly is my last year in school, my junior year, when we won the first weekend and we got through the first weekend, which was big. You win those first 2 games. Going back to school was glorious. Like, you can't even imagine. And then you win another 2 games, right? Then you go back to school, and it's like when you get to go back to school and everybody at Arizona, like, basketball is a religion, right? To me, it's the number one school, our number one athletic program in the state. Arizona softball excluded because they're legend. But as far as like basketball and football, it is the biggest one in the state. So for going back home, it's just like you walk in and it's just like, oh, they're partying. Kids are no longer going to school anymore. Like part of it kind of covers spring break. So that for me was the best part, is after each round going back to school and just people are just going nuts. Teachers aren't teaching anymore. They don't care. Kids don't care. It's amazing.
I hadn't even thought about it in that regard. Like, you do come back and you are these superstars that get to walk the hallways, and everyone is just so involved, especially if your school's involved. Like, I grew up in Canada. We're watching you guys thinking this is the coolest thing. Can't even imagine being at the University of Arizona. Take me then to 2001 when you guys are in the final and it doesn't go so well. Unfortunately for you guys, you lose to Duke. What was what's the memory for you in that moment that stands with you today?
Well, there's so many layers that there's so many layers that go through it. And one, like to start the year, us and Duke, so we were preseason number 1 in the country. They were preseason number 2. They had 5 preseason All-Americans. We had 5 preseason All-Americans. So from the beginning of the season, we were looking at each other. We never played each other, but we were always looking at each other. They had Shane Battier, Jason Williams, Chris Duhon, Carlos Boozer. They were loaded. Mike Dunleavy. We had myself, Gilbert Arenas, Luke Walton, Michael Wright, Lauren Wood. So we were all loaded with professional players. And so going in 2001, Lute Olson, God rest his soul, his wife had passed away that year. So we had a very tumultuous season where it was like we started off number 1, then we almost fell out the ranking because we were, our coach and, dealing with that stuff. But he came back right after. The first of the year, a week or two after she passed. And so we had that emotion that was carrying with us. But once we got to the Final Four, it was the thing that I remember most is one of the last plays before we got on the plane to go play in the Final Four. Luke Walton breaks his thumb. He breaks his thumb in practice. And so it needs surgery. So he shoots up his thumb, and I believe it's on his left hand. And so he shoots up his thumb, and he ended up having surgery literally the weekend we got back from school. So this whole time we knew he needed surgery, but it's the Final Four. Like, this is what we all, and it's your thumb. It's not a knee injury. It's not a back injury. It's basically your pain tolerance at this point in time, which his was extremely high. So that, and then Gilbert Arenas got hurt his hip at the end of the Michigan State game. And this is not to take any credit away from Duke at all, because they deserve to be the national championship, even though the referees never called any fouls on Jason Williams. My thing would have been more of I really wish if we would have been at 100%, I think that game would have been even more fun.
Yeah, that's tough looking back on it, on all the different sort of challenges and roadblocks at that moment, and not walking away with the championship. But you have the memories, and you had all these incredible players that you played with. You mentioned Gilbert Arenas, who's a teammate of ours now here.
Congratulations on that.
Tell us what was he like in college, on and off the court, to be around and to play with?
There's so much to be said. I've known Gilbert since he was 15 years old, and I was, I think, 17, and we were playing in tournaments together. And he was always a goofball, the personality that he had. And looking back, when you see guys like him, even myself in the media space, and then you have guys like Luke Walton that are coaching, Jason Gardner, who was our point guard, he's coaching at IUPUI. My former roommate at Arizona, Josh Pastner, he is, just won the ACC title with Georgia Tech. So there was just such a basketball, and obviously we're on the University of Arizona campus, but it was just there was a collection of just people that just loved basketball, that loved the culture of basketball, that enjoyed teaching, that enjoyed playing. And so having Gilbert there, and even myself, Gilbert was definitely a person that would bring everybody back down. It's guys, I know, we're just playing basketball, right? And so Gilbert was amazing, one of the most talented people I'd ever been around. But definitely he kept things interesting on and off the court. One of Gilbert's great blessings is that social media was not around when we were in school, or else I think things could have gone a little bit more differently. But no, Gilbert was a pleasure. And when I say this to all the people watching this, Gilbert will keep anybody on their toes. Does not matter who it is.
We've got a whole lot more ahead with Richard Jefferson, and I'll be joined by Crystal Dangerfield and Donnie Marshall. This is Ball is Back, College Hoops Edition. Ball is back on Fubo Sports Network. Follow us on all social media at Fubo Sports. Ball is back, and so are we. In a moment, I'll be joined by Crystal Dangerfield and Donnie Marshall. But first, let's get to some tourney talk with Richard Jefferson. Now, you mentioned something with Gilbert Arenas and the idea that it's a good thing that there is no social media then. Well, there's lots of social media now. We know that these kids become just the center of the universe, whether you're a sports fan or beyond. Like they become household names. This year is obviously different. We are still dealing with the global pandemic, and it's going to be, everything's happening in a bubble. So say you're a coach. You have to win the games, but you also have to make sure that your athletes and your whole team's healthy. Like, how do you approach, what are the conversations like amongst the guys, amongst the coaches, in terms of just like winning both of these battles to just be healthy to be able to compete?
Well, and that's the thing. It's expressing to your guys that if you really want to win, if you really want to do something special, it's all about sacrifice. We can say this about COVID and about testing and about not being able to go out. Well, it really comes down to sacrifice. Who is willing to sacrifice more? Now there's another layer of sacrifice that wasn't there before. Before it was who's going to shoot the most in the gym, who's going to study the film, who's going to be the most disciplined in executing your game plan, who's going to make sure that they're getting sleep and not partying. That's how you can determine. And when they say it's a game of inches, all of those things add up to inches. And so now you add another layer. Who's going to not be, going to parties? Who's going to maybe making sure they're wearing masks? Who's going to be doing that stuff? So when you really break it down, the team that's going to win, they're going to need some luck on their side. They're going to need some good fortune, but they're also going to be the more disciplined teams. You look at the Lakers won the championship in the bubble. If someone would have told you at the start of the season, pre-bubble, that the Lakers with Anthony Davis were going to win a championship, no one would have batted an eye. But then all of a sudden it gets into the bubble and everybody has to do all of these extra layers. And the Lakers, to their credit, after being in the bubble for over 100 days, they were crowned the champion. It wasn't just because they were the best team, it's because they were the most disciplined. They did all the things that they were needed to. So if I was a coach and I was talking to these kids, it's like, you can go and do this, but that could be the difference between losing in the first round or losing in the second round and going to the Final Four. This is a once-in-a-lifetime chance that you want to really and truly just buckle down for another month and a half possibly. You don't want to leave anything to chance. Yeah,
because it could really negate sort of what happens with your career going forward, especially if you have one positive test, you guys are out of the tournament. And speaking of your career going forward, for you, Richard, when you were playing, you ended up declaring for the NBA draft not long after. What was going through your mind during the tournament in terms of how you were thinking about your future, and in what way did playing in the tournament sort of influence that decision?
Well, we had two very short, like tournament, opportunities the year before, and obviously that year with Lute Olson's wife passing. But for us, it was you always want to make it to the NBA. Like, random story: the Olympics in the United States for basketball is like it's positive, it's beautiful, it's awesome. But if in the United States, we are trained. If you are a high-level basketball player, it is trying to win a state championship, trying to win an NCAA championship, or going to the NCAA tournament, depending on where you fall in like your opportunities and your level, and then an NBA championship. Those are the three things that everybody wants to accomplish when you start playing basketball at 10 years old. So for me to start getting down that route, you're so focused in. I played against Jason Richardson and Zach Randolph and Charlie Bell in the first. Then we played against other NCAA, other tournament like NBA players. So you're not locked in on the NBA. You're locked in on these damn NBA players that you have to guard. And so I think for me individually, the tournament was so much fun because it gave me confidence. We were finally, together as a team, and, you're already on the radar, but they're watching how you perform in these moments. So it really can change a person's life, how well you play in the tournament.
That's got to be really stressful for a college kid to think we've got all these eyes on us right now, and this could sort of determine what happens with my future.
It can. It determines the type of head start you get, right? If you're the difference between being the 28th pick and the 36th pick is a guaranteed contract of multiple years. So like that's where it can kind of give you a head start. But I still say that cream will rise to the top. it doesn't matter where you're ranked. It doesn't matter where you're this. You see a guy like Jean Morant go to a small school and be the number 2 pick. Mm-hmm. You've seen guys come out of Duke or Arizona and be the number 1 pick and not really play well. So, it's all about what you do when that opportunity presents itself. And part of the NCAA tournament is watching how kids handle this immense pressure, because once you get to the NBA, it's nothing but immense pressure.
Right. And you have certainly done a great job with everything that you have decided to do beyond when you're playing in college and dealing with that pressure. Thank you so much, Richard Jefferson, for joining us. Current NBA analyst on ESPN, former Wildcat, and of course, former NBA champion with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Things turned out pretty well for you.
I'm still trying to see how this whole thing is going to pan out, though. Still trying to see. We got more chapters of this book. So I'm excited that way. The first couple ones.
That's good. I can't wait to read.
Yeah, more. Yeah, it will be televised. Don't worry. You don't have to read the book. Watch the movie.
Awesome. Thank you so much, RJ.
My pleasure.
Ball is back on Fubo Sports Network. Follow us on all social media at Fubo Sports.